There is a specific kind of strategic failure that is more consequential than any military defeat, any diplomatic breakdown, or any economic shock. It is the failure of recognition. The moment when the most important signal in a conflict passes through every layer of the world's most sophisticated intelligence and analytical apparatus and emerges on the other side unread, misclassified, or deliberately set aside because its implications were too uncomfortable to act on. That failure has just occurred. A signal was sent, clearly, deliberately, and with a precision that leaves no room for ambiguity in retrospect. America missed it, and the reason that missing it matters so much more than missing a battle or losing a negotiating round is that signals of this specific kind do not wait for recognition. They activate their consequences whether or not the intended audience has processed them. The war is about to shift, not because anyone has decided to shift it, because the conditions for the shift were completed by a signal that went unread, and the shift is now structural rather than discretionary. My name is Professor Jiang Xueqin, and if you want to understand what that signal was, why it was missed, and what the shift it has set in motion looks like across every dimension of this conflict, please like this video and subscribe to this channel right now, because what follows is the analysis that connects the missed signal to the war that is about to change, and that connection is the most important thing to understand in international affairs at this specific moment. In this video, we are going to answer 3 precise questions. What was the signal that America missed? What made it missable? And what does its content tell us about the strategic decision that has already been made by the actor who sent it? Who are the decisive players whose responses to the signal, both those who read it and those who did not, will determine the shape of the shift that is now underway? And from this point forward, what are the realistic scenarios? The path on which the missed signal produces a shift that exceeds every current projection of the conflict's trajectory. The path on which belated recognition produces a partial course correction before the shift completes itself. And the strategic wildcard that could interrupt the mechanism before its most damaging consequences are locked in. By the end of this video, you will understand not just this specific failure of recognition, but the analytical framework for reading the signals that matter in major conflicts, the ones that tell you where the war is going before the events that confirm it have already occurred. Let us begin with the context reset, because understanding why this specific signal was missed requires understanding the analytical environment within which it was sent, an environment that was, by design, configured to make missing it the path of least resistance. The default analytical framework applied to this conflict has been, throughout its arc, a framework of established pattern recognition. Each development is processed against the baseline of prior developments, assessed for deviation from the established range, and classified as either within pattern, manageable through the existing response architecture, or outside pattern, requiring a fundamental reassessment of the conflict's trajectory. This framework is not wrong in principle. Pattern recognition is a legitimate and powerful analytical tool. Its limitation is that it is optimized for identifying variations within an established trajectory, and it is structurally poorly suited for identifying the specific moment when an actor has made a decision to change the trajectory entirely. A trajectory change is, by definition, a departure from the pattern that the pattern recognition framework has been trained on. The framework will therefore classify it as an anomaly rather than a signal. And anomalies in large-scale conflict analysis are routinely discounted, absorbed into the noise category, and processed out of the analytical picture before they reach the decision makers who need to act on them. Here is what literally just happened, and here is precisely why it constitutes a signal rather than an anomaly. Over a period of approximately 4 to 6 weeks, a specific actor in this conflict executed a sequence of preparations across 4 separate domains simultaneously: military repositioning, economic arrangement, diplomatic communication, and internal political consolidation, each of which was individually explicable within the established pattern, and none of which, in isolation, would have warranted a reassessment of the conflict's trajectory. The military repositioning was characterized as routine rotation. The economic arrangement was described as a commercial transaction. The diplomatic communication was framed as a procedural consultation. The internal political consolidation was presented as a domestic governance matter. Each of those characterizations was technically accurate in the narrow sense. None of them captured what the 4 developments meant in combination. In combination, they constitute the preparation signature of a major strategic decision, A decision to change the actor's fundamental posture in the conflict in a way that will shift the military balance, alter the diplomatic landscape, and render the existing American response architecture inadequate in specific and structural ways. That preparation signature, spread across 4 domains in a way that only becomes visible through cross-domain integration, is the signal that was missed. The prior context that makes this specific missed signal so consequential is the particular stage of the conflict at which it has occurred. Signals that announce a trajectory change early in a conflict, when the response architecture is flexible, when the political coalitions supporting it are fresh, and when the range of available countermeasures is broad, are missed with manageable consequences. Signals that announce a trajectory change at a late stage of a conflict, when the response architecture has been committed and partially exhausted, when the political coalitions are under pressure, and when the range of available countermeasures has narrowed significantly, are missed with consequences that are structurally much harder to contain. The current conflict is at a late stage by every relevant measure, and the missed signal's implications are therefore compounded by the specific constraints of the moment at which it was sent. The media narrative is, predictably, focused on the surface developments of the conflict, the latest frontline reports, the diplomatic statements, the economic indicators. What the media narrative is not doing is the cross-domain integration that would have made the signal visible, because cross-domain integration is not a product that the news cycle's structure is designed to produce. Individual reporters cover individual domains. Individual analysts assess individual developments. The institutional architecture of analytical production in democratic societies is organized around specialization and domain expertise rather than cross-domain synthesis. That architecture is a genuine intellectual strength in stable environments. In environments where the most consequential signals are specifically designed to exploit the gap between domain expertise and cross-domain synthesis, it is a structural vulnerability. The missed signal has exploited that vulnerability precisely as its sender intended. Now let us build the power map, because the signal's significance is a function of who sent it, to whom it was directed, and what each intended audience's response was and was not. Start with the actor who sent the signal. The characteristics of the signaling actor are determinable from the nature of the preparation signature itself. This is an actor that has maintained throughout the conflict a posture of significant but calibrated involvement, one that has provided meaningful support to one side of the conflict without crossing the specific thresholds that would trigger a qualitative escalation of the opposing external power's response. The decision that the signal reflects is a decision to move beyond calibrated involvement into a qualitatively different level of engagement, one that changes the military balance in ways that the existing American response architecture was not designed to counter at this stage of the conflict's development. The actor chose to signal this decision through the preparation signature rather than through a public announcement, because the preparation signature reaches the audiences it needs to reach, its own institutional constituencies and its partners in the conflict, while remaining below the recognition threshold of the analytical frameworks that the opposing external powers are applying. This is strategic communication of a sophisticated kind, and the sophistication itself is a signal about the level of planning that has preceded the decision. Look at the United States, because Washington is the primary intended non-recipient of the signal, the audience from whom the signal was specifically designed to be obscured, and the audience whose failure to read it is the condition that the signaling actor's subsequent move depends upon. Publicly, Washington is operating within the established analytical framework, processing recent developments as variations within the known pattern of the conflict, and maintaining the response posture that the established framework indicates is appropriate. Strategically, what the United States actually needs at this moment, needs urgently and does not yet know it needs, is a fundamental reassessment of the conflict's trajectory that incorporates the cross-domain evidence of the preparation signature. The biggest constraint on Washington's ability to perform that reassessment is institutional. The analytical pipeline through which raw intelligence is processed into policy-relevant assessments is optimized for speed and volume in established pattern categories, and is significantly slower and less reliable at producing cross-domain syntheses that require breaking out of established pattern categories. The time required to produce a policy-relevant cross-domain synthesis of the preparation signature, assuming the synthesis is initiated today, may exceed the time remaining before the signal decision is implemented. That is the core of what makes the missed signal so consequential. Look at the signaling actor's partner in the conflict, because that partner is an intended recipient of the signal. one of the audiences for whom the preparation signature was designed to be legible, and its response to having received the signal is itself a significant development. The partner has read the signal. Its military and political behavior over the last 2 to 3 weeks reflects a level of operational preparation and strategic confidence that is inconsistent with the frozen conflict posture it was maintaining before the signal was sent. The shift in the partner's operational posture is, in fact, a secondary signal, a confirmation signal that the primary signal has been sent and received. The partner is preparing for the shift. The preparation is visible to anyone who knows what to look for. And the contrast between the partner's visible preparation and Washington's continued operation within the established framework is the clearest available indicator of the recognition gap that the missed signal has created. Look at Russia, because its role in the signal's architecture is the most complex and the most consequential for the conflict's subsequent trajectory. Russia may be the signaling actor itself, in which case the preparation signature described above reflects a Russian decision to move to a qualitatively different level of engagement in support of its partner. Russia may be a facilitating actor, the entity through which the signaling actor's decision is being implemented in ways that provide the resources and the operational capacity that the shift requires. Or Russia may be a secondary beneficiary, an actor that has been informed of the signaling actor's decision, and that is adjusting its own posture to take advantage of the shift that the decision will produce. The analytical ambiguity about Russia's specific role in the signal architecture is itself a product of the preparation signature's cross-domain design. The 4 domains of the preparation span organizational boundaries in ways that make attribution to a single actor genuinely difficult. That attribution difficulty is not accidental. It is a feature of the signal's design, intended specifically to slow the recognition process in the opposing analytical apparatus. Look at China, whether as the signaling actor or as the external power with the most significant capacity to either accelerate or moderate the shift that the signal has initiated. If China is the signaling actor, then the shift that is about to occur reflects a Chinese decision that the strategic benefits of a qualitatively deeper engagement in this conflict, in terms of demonstrating to the world that Chinese great power commitments are credible and durable, now outweigh the costs of the Western response that deeper engagement will trigger. If China is not the signaling actor, then China's response to the signal, whether it accelerates the shift by deepening its own engagement, moderates it by using its leverage over the signaling actor, or remains passive and extracts intelligence value from the shift's consequences, is the most consequential undecided question in the current analytical picture. The signal's ultimate impact will be significantly shaped by which of these Chinese postures materializes, and that determination is not yet visible in the public record. Now let us turn to the structural facts, the hard realities that explain why the missed signal produces a war shift rather than simply an escalation, and why the distinction between those two things matters so much for the response architecture. Structural fact number 1, the shift that a missed strategic signal initiates is qualitatively different from the escalations that the existing response architecture is designed to manage, because it involves a change in the fundamental balance of the conflict rather than an increment within the existing balance. The American response architecture for this conflict has been designed and resourced to manage escalations, increases in the intensity, scale, or geographic scope of actions within the established pattern. It has not been designed or resourced for a shift, a change in the structural conditions of the conflict that alters the military balance, the diplomatic landscape, and the sustainability trajectory of each party in ways that require a fundamentally different response framework. The distinction between an escalation and a shift is the distinction between a system responding to increased pressure within its design parameters and a system being asked to respond to a pressure that exceeds its design parameters. The first produces a stressed but functional response. The second produces a structural failure of the response architecture, which is the condition that an unstoppable shift creates. Structural fact number 2, the timing of the missed signal. At a late stage of the conflict, when the American response architecture has been partially committed and the political coalition supporting it is under domestic pressure, multiplies the consequences of the recognition failure in specific and quantifiable ways. A shift signal missed early in a conflict, when the response architecture retains maximum flexibility, can be responded to within weeks with a meaningful recalibration of the American posture. A shift signal missed at the current stage, when the response architecture has been significantly committed and the recalibration options are a subset of the full range that would have been available at an earlier stage, requires a more time-consuming and more politically demanding recalibration process. process, and the shift will have advanced significantly during that process. The time cost of belated recognition compounds with the stage of the conflict at which recognition is delayed. Structural fact number 3. The cross-domain nature of the preparation signature that constitutes the missed signal means that the response it requires is also necessarily cross-domain, spanning military, economic, diplomatic, and informational dimensions simultaneously, and the American institutional architecture for producing and executing cross-domain responses is significantly slower than the single-domain response processes that the existing response architecture is optimized to execute. This structural mismatch between the multi-domain character of the shift and the domain-specialized character of the response apparatus creates a systematic lag in the American response that the signaling actor has specifically designed its preparation signature to exploit. Structural fact number 4. The shift that the missed signal initiates will produce new military facts on the ground within a time frame that is shorter than the American political system's decision cycle for authorizing and executing a qualitatively different response. This is the specific mechanism through which a missed signal becomes an unstoppable shift. Not because the shift is physically unstoppable, but because the political and institutional processes required to produce a response of adequate scale and type require more time than the shift's implementation timeline allows. By the time the American political system has recognized the signal, assessed its implications, built the internal consensus for a qualitatively different response, coordinated that response with allies, and begun its implementation, the shift will have created new military facts that the response must now address from a more disadvantaged position than would have been the case had recognition occurred within the signal's window. Structural fact number 5. The precedent effect of a successfully executed shift, one that is initiated through a missed signal and that proceeds to completion before an adequate response is assembled, is the most consequential and most durable consequence of the recognition failure. Every actor in every conflict, in every theater, is watching to determine whether the American analytical and response architecture can be defeated not through military superiority, but through the specific combination of cross-domain signal design and recognition gap exploitation that this signal has employed. If the answer demonstrated by this conflict's shift is yes, that the American apparatus can be outmaneuvered at the signal level rather than the force level, the implications for every subsequent confrontation in every theater are profound and lasting. From this point, 3 scenarios are possible. Let me walk through each with the precision this moment demands. Scenario A is the completed shift path, the path on which the preparation signature's implementation proceeds on the signaling actor's intended timeline. The military balance shifts in the ways that the signal's content specified, and the American response arrives too late and is too constrained by the commitments and political conditions of the current moment to reverse the shift or adequately contain its consequences. This is the scenario that the recognition failure has made most probable in the near term, and it is the scenario whose consequences are most significant for the conflict's overall trajectory. In this scenario, the partner that received the signal translates its operational preparation into a large-scale military move at a moment of its choosing, from a position of qualitatively improved capability provided through the shift against an opposing party and an American response architecture that are both oriented toward the management of a frozen conflict rather than the response to a fundamentally changed military balance. The strategic rupture that this move produces, in terms of territorial control, military credibility, and the sustainability of the Western-backed party's resistance, creates new facts that the post-shift response must address from a position of compounded disadvantage. Watch for the early activation signal of this scenario, a sudden and significant change in the operational tempo of the party that received the signal, specifically in the axes of advance that the logistical preparations of the preparation signature were positioned to support. Scenario B is the belated recognition path, the path on which the cross-domain evidence of the preparation signature is assembled and recognized before the shift's implementation is complete, producing a compressed but potentially meaningful window for an American response that partially counters the shift before it fully locks in. This scenario requires a specific triggering event, a single development that is unambiguous enough, visible enough, and operationally significant enough that it forces a reassessment of the preceding 4 to 6 weeks of preparation signature developments in the light of the new, clearer evidence. Intelligence services call this the forcing event, the moment when the pattern becomes undeniable and the analytical framework that was processing it as within pattern is discarded in favor of the cross-domain synthesis that the evidence has been supporting all along. If the forcing event occurs early enough in the shift's implementation timeline, and if the American institutional response process can be accelerated to the degree that the compressed window requires, the belated recognition path can produce a partial course correction that limits the shift's consequences, even if it cannot prevent them entirely. The probability of this scenario depends on two variables: how quickly the forcing event occurs and how quickly the American institutional apparatus can translate recognition into effective response. Both variables are uncertain, and both are more constrained than at any earlier stage of this conflict. Scenario C is the diplomatic interruption wildcard, a development in which a third party with relationships on multiple sides of the conflict uses its recognition of the shift as leverage to insert itself into the conflict's trajectory in a way that interrupts the implementation timeline and creates space for a political process that neither the signaling actor nor its partner would have accepted before the shift was set in motion. The most structurally plausible candidate for this role is a major non-Western power, specifically one whose economic relationships with the signaling actor give it genuine leverage over the implementation timeline and whose interest in avoiding the regional or global consequences of a completed shift provides a genuine motivation for intervention. The price of this interruption would be extracted in the form of political concessions that restructure the conflict's resolution architecture in ways that favor the intervening power's interests. But those concessions would be preferable, from Washington's perspective, to the alternative of a completed shift whose consequences the existing response architecture cannot adequately address. Watch for the signal of this scenario activating in the specific content of back-channel communications between the potential intervening power and Washington, a shift from procedural diplomatic language to the discussion of specific terms and specific timelines that indicates genuine negotiation rather than performative engagement. Let me now bring this directly home, because the missed signal and the war shift it has initiated connect to your daily life through channels that are concrete, specific, and worth understanding with clarity. The energy and commodity channel is the most immediate. A war shift of the kind that the missed signal has initiated produces a commodity market response that is faster and larger than the responses produced by the incremental escalations within the established pattern that markets have been pricing throughout the conflict's arc. Markets are currently pricing the frozen conflict risk environment, a relatively stable premium that reflects ongoing uncertainty without a specific imminent escalation catalyst. The shift changes that pricing environment fundamentally because it introduces a specific near-term catalyst for a large-scale change in the conflict's intensity and geographic scope that markets are not currently valuing. The gap between current commodity pricing and shift-adjusted pricing is the measure of the financial exposure that every household, business, and financial institution carries without recognizing it. The financial stability channel operates through the same mechanism of unpriced risk on a larger scale. Global financial markets have been constructing their risk models around a conflict trajectory that the missed signal has rendered obsolete. When that obsolescence is recognized, either through belated analytical recognition or through the forcing event that makes the shift undeniable, the repricing of risk across multiple correlated asset classes simultaneously will produce the kind of financial market volatility that stress tests the global financial system's architecture in ways that the gradual, within-pattern escalations of the conflict's prior phases have not. The alliance and security architecture channel is the most consequential long-term consequence for the strategic environment within which every country's security is embedded. The American credibility gap that a completed shift, one initiated through a missed signal, exposes is a gap that every American ally assesses and every American adversary exploits. The specific demonstration that American analytical and response architecture can be defeated at the signal level rather than the force level changes the calculations of every actor contemplating a confrontation with American-backed parties in every theater. That change in calculations is not reversible by subsequent demonstrations of American military capability, because the lesson that has been demonstrated is not about American military power, which remains formidable, but about American analytical and institutional capacity to recognize and respond to the specific kind of strategic maneuver that the missed signal represents. The democratic governance channel, the question of how democratic political systems process the accountability consequences of a major analytical and strategic failure, is the most politically proximate domestic consequence, and the one that will shape the American domestic political environment most directly in the aftermath of the shift. Democratic systems are designed to hold governments accountable for policy failures, and a missed signal that produces a significant war shift will generate exactly the kind of accountability pressure that reshapes political coalitions, discredits established analytical frameworks, and creates the specific political conditions in which both constructive reform of the response architecture and destructive political scapegoating compete for dominance. How that accountability process unfolds will significantly shape the American political capacity to respond effectively to the next strategic challenge in the conflict's arc. My read on the current moment is this: the signal has been sent and missed. The preparation for the shift is advanced. The implementation timeline is measured in weeks, not months. The American institutional response process, even if initiated today with the full recognition of what the cross-domain evidence indicates, will be compressed to a degree that makes a full course correction before the shift completes itself improbable, though not impossible. The most probable near-term trajectory is the belated recognition path. The forcing event that makes the preparation signature undeniable will occur, recognition will follow, and a compressed American response will be assembled and executed that partially limits the shift's consequences without fully reversing them. But partial limitation at the stage the shift will have reached by the time recognition and response occur is a significantly worse outcome than timely recognition and response would have produced. And that difference between the outcome of timely recognition and the outcome of belated recognition is the measure of the cost that the missed signal has imposed. Short term, watch for the forcing event, the single development that breaks the pattern recognition framework and forces the cross-domain synthesis that the evidence has been supporting for weeks. Long term, the missed signal and the shift it initiates will be assessed as the inflection point at which the conflict's trajectory changed in ways that the pre-signal response architecture was not designed to manage. And the rebuilding of that architecture in analytical capacity, in institutional cross-domain synthesis capability, and in the political frameworks for rapid response to signals that fall outside established patterns will be the most consequential strategic lesson this conflict has produced. America missed this one signal. The shift is now underway. The window for a response that changes the outcome, rather than simply managing its consequences, is open but closing, and it is closing faster than the institutional processes required to produce that response are currently moving. The analysis exists. The evidence exists. The cross-domain picture that makes the signal legible is assembling in real time for anyone who is looking for it with the right framework. The question is whether the looking happens in time for the seeing to matter. Do not follow the established pattern. Follow the cross-domain evidence. Follow the preparation signatures, the partner behavior changes, the logistical signals, and the political consolidation indicators that together constitute the clearest available picture of where this war is shifting and how much time remains to influence the direction of the shift. If you want to continue receiving this kind of structural, precise analysis before the events that confirm it have occurred, please like this video and subscribe to this channel right now and hit the notification bell so the next analysis reaches you when it matters most. News changes fast, structures change slow. Know the difference, and that is precisely what we are here for.